start your podcast is, if you could go back to any monumental moment in human history, what would it be and why?
Oh, in human history, jeez. Oh, I mean, I'd go to Woodstock '69. That's what I'd do.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe it's not that big of a deal in history as a whole, but if I get to choose, then hell yeah, I'd want to do Woodstock. I reckon that seemed like a pretty awesome event. I've seen so much about it in documentaries and stuff, and Jimi Hendrix and whatnot. I think it'd be cool to attend that.
Yeah, I for me, I mean, so this kind of comes almost. There's another podcast I did a few months back where the question was something to do with what superpower would you have, and a guest answered saying she'd want to be really good at a musical instrument or something, and I was like, what? Music is out of the question for me. I'm flying. Like, I don't,
yeah, totally.
Moment in history, I'm almost like, I'd love to be like a sort of upstanding musician and pick a musical thing. But I was like, I'd love to just go and see like an epic battle,
Yeah, right.
See something ridiculous,
Maybe be around for the dinosaurs would be pretty intense.
Yeah, that would be. Well, I guess that's not technically human history, is it? So I don't know.
Human history. Okay.
Yeah, I did wonder. I was thinking, yeah, maybe you never know. Maybe we got history wrong. Seems unlikely. Yeah, the question that he got asked, the last guest, was, have you ever been attracted to a cartoon character, and if so, who? So the quality of conversation starters really does vary wildly. But yeah,
I'll have to think of something good. I'll have to think of something good to pass on.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice when there's an inspiring one, but it almost breaks the ice a bit when I get one where I have to like jump in the deep end and like ask someone if they've ever like peed in the pool and stuff like that, or shout on stage, which I have asked both of those. So it varies. Yeah, I mean, there's something I saw. I was kind of always do a bit of a like deep dive on socials and all that before I chat to everyone, and stalking, as it was referred to by one of the guests, but I would go with deep dive. I prefer that. And I saw you posted a thing not so long ago asking about like inspiring kind of Instagram accounts to follow. Like what if anyone could recommend stuff like that. And I was kind of wondering what you thought in terms of what you see online, be it musical or otherwise. Do you feel like there is sort of a lack of inspiring content on the whole, or is it just that maybe the things that you've curated in your own follower list is not inspiring you?
I think it's just it's just the way it's sort of played out for me. You have these familiar things that you follow and stuff like that, and I'm just craving new stuff and different stuff, and especially in music, because I think I've surrounded myself with so much metal and prog metal and shred and all that sort of stuff that these days I feel like I'm, I love that stuff, but I want to see other things too. I'm interested in so much different music, and I listen to so much different music of so many different, styles and eras and all this stuff. So I just want to see, is there other things going on that I'm not aware of that might be of interest to me and stuff. It just helps. Anything fresh and new and different or unique. It just I think it's always a good thing to seek out new things and try and add to your, sort of your background as a listener and a music appreciator and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I've sort of done it to myself, where I've put a lot into the more guitar and metal sort of side of things, which is great, which I love, obviously. But it's just time to see what else is going on, and I love what, there's nothing better. I think there's nothing better when you discover an artist that really hits home to you, and it's like it just it consumes your whole day. You're listening to new albums, and it's really exciting time. when you discover something new that you really connect with. So I was just in a period of like, just in a bit of a down period, I suppose, and just wanting to chase that feeling again. So yeah, thought I'd ask and see what came back.
So do you find, without, it sort of sounds like I'm sort of diving deep straight away, but when you talk about like being in a down period and inspiration, do you find a lack of inspiration can kind of lead to a more, can kind of, I guess in a more positive spin, I could say, when you feel inspired, is that when you feel your most sort of happiest in yourself, when you've got that constant inspiration?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just love that feeling of, you find something that you connect with and you just want to go on long trips and listen to albums back to back. And it's just, I don't know, music really affects me. Like it really, it hits me deep. So if I'm just, nothing's just giving me that feeling, it's like, I guess it's like a drug, you're trying to get that feeling back. So yeah.
Yeah. It's a weird one because I find actually, when you see those Spotify, yearly Spotify Wrapped, whatever it is, with the, my listening hours are way lower than a lot of my friends. And I think it's because I play guitar a lot and I teach guitar as like my job, and just generally and sort of surrounded by musical stuff quite a lot. I go to gigs a lot and things. And, so I find weirdly, it takes quite a lot for me. It's so weird that listening, like I'm building my whole life or trying to around music. And then the amount I'm actually listening to it is less than a lot of my friends. I remember I had one friend, he had, I think, over 100,000, would be minutes. Wouldn't have been hours, would it? That'd be silly. They give you the stat, don't they? And it was like the six figures. Like, what? How do you listen to that much? I just don't have the time to do that. Do you ever find that being so involved with music sometimes takes away from that spark listening to it, or do you always have that kind of sense of awe when you find a good song?
I don't think it personally pushes me away from listening to it, but as long as I'm interested in something, so yeah, I mean, I do have moments where I'm like, I'm like, if I'm going for a half an hour drive, sometimes I'll think to myself, you know what, I'm just gonna not have music because I've been like, I might have been working on something, or whatever it is. So it's like a chance to just reset a little bit. But I don't personally get driven away from it. I'm still, as long as there's something I'm interested in, or even if I'm not, like I'll just cycle back through, the classics that I love. I might, I spend a lot of time thinking about what haven't I listened to in a while, like, and I'll be like, oh, you know what, I'll listen to that early Blink-182 album. I haven't heard that in, ages. So I'll cycle back to that. So if there's nothing new and, that's sort of piquing my interest, then I'll sort of do those, those things, cycling back through albums and stuff like that. And, I really love it. I think that's another really great feeling is when you, you might remember this obscure artist that you're obsessed with in high school or something. You might not have thought of them ever since. And then you're like, oh yeah, I wonder how that, I haven't heard that album in ages, I'll chuck that on. And that sometimes is a huge vibe, hearing back some of those things. And you start to get all those like emotions of like, oh man, I was like, I totally remember I was like, really into this, whatever it was at the time, it could be anything. Or, the people that you were hanging out with at that time, you think about that and some of the stuff you were doing and that. So that's a really good vibe, I think. But yeah, I don't really tire of music. Like some people, I've heard some people say, they're heavily into music and they love just not listening to anything, or they listen to podcasts or stuff like that, non-music related things. But personally,
time them. What's
that?
Waste of time then.
No, I love podcasts, but yeah. I never have a thought of like, oh man, it's too much music, I need to stop. And I've never had that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, what you mentioned, funnily enough, something that I've picked up on recently. When you talked about sometimes you go for a drive and you just won't have anything on for whatever reason, if you just kind of want a bit of a break from it. I've been watching a few podcasts recently, talking about sort of dopamine and motivation and all of this stuff, and I'd be interested to hear your take on this, but apparently a very harmful thing for your motivation for something is when you stack these things that you find exciting. So for example, like an easy example is like if you go to the gym and then you listen to really like pumping music that really like gets you going, you then associate going to the gym with having this like music on, and if you then don't have the music, your motivation to and the reward you get from going to the gym isn't as high, so then it kind of takes away from that experience. And I think what I'm trying to do is actually in moments of low sort of excitement, things like just driving to the shops or something, I try not to put music on, because it sounds really weird, but I don't want to just I don't want it to kind of become attached to these, like I almost want to be okay with just being bored a little bit, and then when I listen to music I just sit there and I just listen to it, you know. It's a bit weird. I like to just isolate these things. It's so funny, like I started having like I'll sound like one of these like motivation obsessed people now, but like I started trying doing like cold showers and stuff, and it feels quite good afterwards. Actually I feel quite awake, but then when I have a hot shower I'm like, whoa, this is so nice. It's like so rewarding. I think I'm trying to do the same thing with music. I don't know what what your take is on that. Maybe I'm just wasting my time.
No, I think you're right. I think that actually that sounds like it would have that effect that you're saying. I definitely agree. But I don't personally put too much energy into those thoughts. But having said that, I think you're definitely onto something there. It makes perfect sense, you know, like the gym, and what you said about the gym and stuff. That does make sense to me. So I think you're right. So yeah, I think, you know, you don't want to have. I'm just thinking about your friend with the like 100,000 hours or whatever of listening. I wonder how much he's actually listening though. Like, you know, he might be having it on while gaming or something. I don't know. Like, and does that really count? Are you really listening, you know, in that way? So if you have less listening time, that, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean, I don't think that really means anything, but maybe it means that you're listening. You're like, you know, you're in the moment with the music rather than having it on as a background thing. That's just what I mean, I don't know your friend. I could be completely wrong, but I'm just thinking that could be a reason for having so much listening time, you know.
It's the sort of going on to that and talking about like listening, sort of what passive listening, I guess, you know. Obviously, so I think the temptation again is music becomes this, like, I find it just sometimes, if I'm not careful, it just becomes like the thing that fills the space if I'm doing something that I'm not interested in. If I'm doing some emails and I put music on, and like I said, I don't want to devalue it in that way. I know that might sound really quite pretentious. I'm not trying to be all smart about it.
No.
You know, I'm not like worshipping music in this sort of, you know, but I find actually that the world is so full of distractions, and we're so bad at focusing on one thing and just doing that. Like if I'm doing my emails, it's like I'm just doing my emails. I'm bored, but I'm doing my emails. And why do I have to be excited about something right now? And I think then when I do try and, you know, listen to music or have a podcast on while I'm doing it, it takes away from each experience. I don't feel like it just builds my time then and there. But going on to your kind of music, it's obviously, when you compare it to your average pop song, there's a lot more technicality going on in compositionally and actually in just the physical playing of the instrument. And with all the kind of distractions around, you know, in sort of modern day life, how do you kind of stay focused on writing stuff that is quite technically difficult and complex in some ways anyway? How do you stay focused on that in such a sort of busy world? I know you mentioned you kind of did a bit of a retreat, I think, for your last album. Is that right? Like a writing retreat?
Yeah.
So maybe I've just answered the question, but yeah, how do you, or generally, on a more general sense, how do you kind of just keep the focus on writing stuff that really requires a lot of your attention?
Well, I think I've conditioned myself to be like that, you know. So when I'm writing music, I mean, I'm dedicating, you know, all my attention to that. Like I can't. That's the thing. Like basically, I will go months without picking up a guitar. I mean, you know, yeah, but I won't pick it up unless it's like, all right, I'm ready to do something, you know, and I'm all in, you know, I'm an all in or not kind of guy, right? So if we're writing a song, then I'm going to analyze everything. I'm going to deep dive on that song. I want to flesh out every possibility of that song and get the best out of that song that I can. And that consumes my whole being. So I think that's just how I've wired myself over time. You know, if I'm writing a song, I'm trying to write the best song I've ever written every single time. So there's just no half-assedness about it mentally or physically or anything. So it consumes me completely. I'm like blacked out in a way when I'm sitting down writing music. Time is not a thing. Like, you know, you look up at the clock and you're like, oh shit, it's 5 a.m. Okay, I better start thinking about how I'm going to approach this moving forward. If I should go to bed, or if I'm really vibing something, then I'll just keep going through and, you know, wear the consequences later, I suppose. But yeah, I'm definitely, it's just wired within me. I think it's just how I've developed from the beginning, you know, like from learning guitar and trying to learn songs that I like. And it's like, I think, you know, I obsess about it, right? So it's like, in a way, I've mentioned this to people before. It's kind of like my gaming. Making music and playing guitar is my gaming. So I'm trying to complete the mission, you know, I'm trying to win against the boss or whatever, you know. So I feel like I can't let this beat me. I need to win this like somehow. And, you know, of course you fail time and time again, but, you know, I think with that mentality, you can make some breakthroughs here and there. And that's how, you know, you build your chops and you know, write that riff, and you have that feeling of like, I'm stoked on this riff. Like I've put my whole self into this and I can enjoy what I've done, you know?
I feel like sort of gamifying stuff is really useful and sort of undervalued as a tool, because there's no like, you know, you pick up the guitar or whatever your instrument is, there's no like finish line, you know, there's not like well, I've done guitar now, you know.
Exactly.
And I think so. You've got to find these ways to like, to find the little, to sort of see the progress. And like I said, it's like if guitar had levels, right? You know, imagine like Candy Crush or something. Like, you know, if guitar just had levels, and I don't know, there'd be plenty of detriment to that, but the benefit in some sense was you'd get a little, you know, a little tick next to your sort of guitar box every time you do something new. And
sure.
I think if you can make something out of that, I think that's quite an important way of kind of developing your playing. But one thing I picked up on that you said was when you pick up the guitar and write something, you want to write the best thing you've written when you do that. I know I find that so harmful for me when I'm trying to write songs, because I always sit down and I go, right, this has got to be amazing. And then, of course, the chance that what I write right now is the best thing I've ever written is like pretty slim. It's not that it won't happen. Hopefully it will just happen on those occasions if I just keep working. But do you feel is that kind of obsession that you talked about, do you feel there are, what are the kind of pros and cons of that? Like, this is going to be the best song each time.
Well, I think it just makes me accountable. It doesn't make me like take the cheap options, you know? So I think at the end of the day, I don't write my best ever song, but I'll write something that I've dedicated to and I've put in the effort to. So I've given it my best shot. I've given it my best go, right? So that's what I get out of it. I don't beat myself up or or I don't tell myself like, okay, this isn't the best song I've ever written halfway through, so what's the point? I don't ever think like that. I just stick with it. I do the best I can for the song. I go in trying to make the best thing ever, and then, you know, what comes out is what comes out. So I think ultimately it's the greater goal, you know, because if I'm writing a song, usually it's for a release. So it's either it's an EP or an album or something, you know. So that's, if I can write a song and I'm happy with that, maybe it's not the best song in the world, but it's contributing to this thing that's the greater goal, you know. And, you know, the more I've contributed to the album, the more I can think about, all right, cool, I've got more to my repertoire. I've got more songs I can potentially perform live, and I've got more to give to people to listen to my music. And, you know, it's the greater good. So you sort of think about that higher end, I suppose. And, you know, I try not to get too critical about what you've actually done, but just think about, okay, cool, this isn't the best in the song ever, but it's contributing to this album, which is contributing to my career. It's contributing to my catalog. It's gonna be something I can draw from in future, or, you know, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think the drawing from it in future is important as well. Like, I've been trying to just spend time, because I don't feel like I'm too much in a rut right now, but because I left my band recently, I was feeling quite uninspired, and I thought, like, I've got to kind of, you know, for various reasons, and I was like, I've got to find that inspiration again. So I'm just allowing myself, in terms of, you said like gamifying stuff, I just set myself like a timer, and I'll just try and rewrite a riff in my own style, or I'll take like an arpeggio and try and write something out of that, you know. I'll try and like use that.
Yeah.
Just trying to like practice creativity, you know, just practice being, and I guess the ultimate practice of creativity is creating. It's just like making, you know, and writing stuff. So it's a tricky one to stay inspired. Like, do you find that the kind of, again, going back to when, especially with writing your latest kind of release, you talked about kind of getting away from sort of modern life, I guess, and do you find it hard to kind of get that sense of, like, I know you talked about your obsession, but with sort of, you know, your hyper focus, but there are so many things that can stop you from getting into that state of mind, or do you find that actually those things fall by the wayside and you can just have at it with your playing?
Yeah, I think when I'm sitting down to create, I'm in such a way that I'm interested in what I'm doing to such a degree that other distractions in life seem to just fall away for that moment. So I'm probably not writing if there's stuff going on, and, you know, I'm thinking about some random thing that in my life that's got nothing to do with music, and it's sort of taking a lot of brain power and whatever. You know, like, for example, like, you know, I had to do taxes recently, right? So I have to go through all my transactions and put everything in spreadsheets and all that sort of stuff. So basically, I'd find it very difficult to end that session of doing that sort of stuff and then, all right, now I'm going to write the best riff ever. I kind of need a little bit of mental freedom, like, away from those things. And so I know basically I sort of lock myself off, you know, okay, this week I want to spend some time writing. So the first day I'll entertain the idea. Maybe I'm just playing with sounds and stuff like that, you know, until I really feel that excitement to create. You know, sometimes you just got to be there and just give you the chance to be inspired. You know, it's not, you know, just because you're in the studio doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be inspired, but at least you're putting yourself in that space, you know. So I don't force myself. I might lock off a week and be like, all right, I'm going to write music, and then I'll wake up, I'll go in the studio, and then I'll just think to myself, you know what, I'm just not in the mood, you know. I'm just going to have to do something else, you know. And maybe I'll spend time listening to music or something instead, you know. But yeah, I'm at least putting myself in that position. But I can't really blend two worlds. Like if I've just come back from some out shopping for someone's birthday or something, I'm probably not going to get into writing because I'm just not of too much going on, So I've got to sort of set that time aside and see how we go.
So, because you said about with your writing, how sometimes it just ends up at 5 a.m. You're like, whoa, here we are,
Yeah.
And then you figure that out, detriment of other things, and then you say, okay, I'll figure that out, because writing is the more important thing right now. Do you feel like you have a good balance in your life of things like routine and that, or do you feel like sometimes the music can almost get in the way of I guess the more staple kind of things that you need to maintain in life?
Yeah, dude. I think
really like I'm throwing shade. I'm not. I'm just interested.
No, you're right. I've sort of been living in a bit of an imbalance, to be honest. So it's at this time in my life, I'm just finished an album. I'm basically resetting, and honestly, I've lived my life in not in an unbalanced way, right? And it does affect you in time, and has affected me. Like this year, actually, definitely has affected me. My mental health got really, really bad this year, and it was because I was just too unbalanced in how I was approaching it. So, and I've been that way for quite a while. And it's sort of worked out okay. I mean, I was working jobs 3 years ago, so that forces you to have some sort of balance, Now I'm sort of left to my own devices. You can get too obsessed in stuff and get too deep into it, and other things slip in a bad way in your life, So you gotta be careful. I don't have a very structured life, like you said. So at the moment, I have my to-do list, right? So I know I've got to do this. I know I've got to do that. I know I've got to do that. I know I've got to do that. And after that, it's my staples is writing music and performing music. That's my business, right? So those things are important, and they're just ongoing, So when I've cleared up my to-do list, I have that mental space open, then I can entertain the idea. But yeah, I think being unbalanced about it and pushing everything away to just write music is not healthy in the long term, and it definitely caught up with me this year. Absolutely. So I've had a bit of a life adjustment in some ways to try and balance my stuff out a bit, and in a good way, and help me be creative and that in a healthy way, and ultimately benefit my productivity.
Yeah, it's weird that sort of how fixing the other things. I always feel better. I mean, I'm sort of getting back into doing a bit more exercise. I've sort of fallen off it a bit recently. I always feel at my best when I spend time exercising, and it's if you were an ultra sort of creative person, you might be thinking like, oh, that hour and plus travel time to the gym or whatever, you can think, oh, that might be better spent on my instrument. But it's like that. I think the time you spend working on yourself, to a certain degree, there's diminishing returns, but is invested time, so that when you sit down with your instrument, you're sharp, you're with it, you've got nothing else to think about. Whereas if I'm not feeling fit and healthy, if I'm not balancing things like sorting my emails and just keeping up to date with all of that stuff, I don't sit down with a clear conscience on the guitar, because I think I've got all this other stuff to do that isn't
totally
right. So it's almost like, yes, I could sit there for 12 hours in the day. I think I'd get a bit fed up by hour 11, but yeah. I mean, so with we can go as much or as little into this stuff as you like, but with regards to sort of finding that balance, what sort of things do you feel like you've done to kind of achieve more of a balance in the last year or so, or kind of to maintain that kind of healthy, I guess, lifestyle?
I mean, I'm trying to engage more into the outside world, I guess. So Yeah, I'm doing one thing as a start into a routine, which is helping my wife out with her business. She's got a new business, and I'm dedicating a day to helping her. So it's just like that day is not about me. That's about her, you know, and helping her. So I think that's a good starting point for me personally, because, you know, I've been very obsessed with creating and making music, because that's my passion and my business and everything. So most days prior to this year, it's been like, all right, do I feel like writing music? All right, cool. I'm going to write music, you know, and it doesn't matter what else is going on, you know, sort of, it's just not a good way to be, you know? So yeah. So now I'm trying to implement that sort of thing, helping out her and just giving her a day, and, you know, being a bit more normal in that way. Just doing more things, like just spending more time with her and stuff, you know? And then, you know, that makes our relationship better and all that sort of stuff, and makes us both happier. And that's just going to make my mental state a lot better for when I'm, you know, do have time for my own creativity and stuff like that. So that's just one very small move I've made recently towards that. But yeah, it's just, you know, trying to engage more and go out more with friends and go out to gigs and just be a bit more normal, you know?
Yeah, I realised when sort of mid-pandemic how so I went to music school, and a lot of my social life was like going to gigs. Even if I didn't really like the bands, I would just kind of go because, yeah, they're my friends, and like my friends will be there. And just, you go to enough gigs, you see someone once, and then you see them at another gig, you're like, oh, I know you, sort of. And then
yeah,
really great way. And I think when they went away, I realised how reliant I was on them. I don't think in necessarily an unhealthy way, but I was quite reliant on like just going to gigs for sort of meeting people and stuff. And yeah, it's funny how, like I was saying, kind of maintaining that balance really affects your kind of your creative process in a way that you might not realize until you actually find the balance a bit more, which is a tricky one to kind of achieve, I think. But yeah, in terms of sort of, again, meeting people and stuff, I noticed you've done a few sort of collaborative, you know, some of your releases have been collaborative with different, you collaborated with different artists and stuff. How do you kind of go about like integrating their ideas and sort of, because I know, again, a lot of what you're writing is in the grand scheme of things compared to a lot of other genres on the more technical side. So I imagine integrating other ideas becomes that much more tricky. I don't know, I'm kind of hypothesizing, good word. Congratulating myself on that word.
Yeah.
How does that kind of process work?
Yeah, definitely. I do find it sometimes challenging to collaborate. I mean, it kind of depends who you're collaborating with. When I did the Jake and myself EP, Coalesce EP, that was just a breeze, like a pleasure. Like, I think we both have very similar tastes, and we both bounce off each other's, you know, styles and that sort of stuff. So that was like super helpful, and it just went super natural and really flowed really well. The other thing I did was a single called The Fire Inside with Andy Sizik on vocals. And I had Andrew Scott on drums. And that worked really well because I sort of fleshed out the song in the instrumental sense. And then we sort of started on that. We started there. So we sort of had a base of a song, which I sort of put together. And then Andrew would put his take on the drums and add things and really put his stamp on it and change a whole bunch of stuff for the better, you know. And Andy somehow just really just made it his own, you know. And that was one of those things that I was hoping it would work out, and it just worked. It just somehow did, you know. But I think I sort of came in with a bit of a song fleshed out, so that sort of was a good starting point for everyone to work with. Whether the Jake Howsam Low one was a bit more 50-50, So we would show each other a riff that we've got, and then we'd each try and expand on that. But yeah, I definitely used to struggle with writing with other people, because this whole project basically started because I was always an equal contributor to stuff, or I wasn't even contributing. I was just performing the parts and stuff like that. And it used to sort of drive me nuts, because I'd have my own ideas on what I would personally want to do and want to hear, but you can't get your way when you're working in an even, like a band or so, everyone's equal say and stuff like that. So I sort of got to a point where I'm like, I just can't do that anymore. I want to just do my own thing, and have that control. So it's only sort of in the last few years where I've entertained the idea of like going back to like getting other people involved and stuff like that. I'm so glad that I have that ability now, because it's helped me make better music, because you have more experienced people suggesting things and taking the song in different directions than you typically would. And I think collaboration, you always get a better result, when you got more brains involved. And I mean, providing that you are on the same kind of plane or whatever, you've both got the same ideas and you value the same principles and stuff like that, then I think it can be a beautiful thing. So yeah, I'm definitely trying to be more open to it, but it's just a result of me being sort of burned in the past and feeling like I didn't get my share or whatever, so I'm gonna just do my own thing now.
Yeah, it's I've weirdly kind of got a couple of sort of things occurred to me when you're saying that, because there's a band over here in the UK that sort of I had the opportunity to potentially sort of join or play, and they play in it, and they play some quite big festivals and stuff, and they tour and all that, but there wasn't going to be any opportunity to be creative when I would be the guitarist, and I love the band, and I love the guy who I've spoken to about it, but for me it's just about being creative, so not having that output. It's like I'd love to play like Download Festival over here and stuff like that, that's like that's a massive goal of mine for me. But sacrificing that creative thing, it's like, well, yes, the shows are a massive part of it. I want to go out and play these songs, but I want to go and play my songs, The other thing was when you're talking about collaborative working, with the band I used to work with, I found that it was a tricky one where you're talking about obviously valuing the same things, and I think it was a tricky one because I started initially as like far and away the primary songwriter, and then we talked about being more collaborative about it because I know the guys wanted more input, and I think I'd be interested to hear your take, because I can't decide whether I was open or closed-minded or how it all went out, but I was somewhat reluctant at times, although I wouldn't maybe have said it at the time, to take in their input, because I didn't feel like we had the same values and the same kind of, although we all had the same end goal of writing a good song, it's obvious, it just didn't feel like we had the same way of getting there. So I would it was a tricky one where I'd love to be in a band where, as a guitarist and as a songwriter, I write my quarter, if you like, if you take your drums, bass, guitar, vocals, thereabouts, but I just didn't feel happy giving up that control, because I didn't feel like we shared the same values. I almost don't know what the question is there. I just thought I'd share my opinion.
So I think what you're saying there just means that you haven't found the right people that have that same level as you meant, like in a creative sense and stuff. So like I know that because all the times I've worked with people, that never has been the feeling. It's always been like, all right, so maybe I'm working on like a drum, for Andrew Scott, for instance, I'll program the drums in my own way and then send him the song, and he'll put his own drums over the top. And it's just, you get it back and you're like, yeah, okay, that's way better. Awesome. All right. You know, there's no like regret or like, oh no, you know what I mean? I mean, there might be like tiny things, and that's just, it could go either way. So you just have that discussion maybe, but like, it's always been, for the most part, it's like, brilliant. Okay, that's way better. Awesome. And with Jake, same thing. Like, it just was so natural. There was never really that feeling of like, it should have gone this way or it should have done this. So I reckon you just haven't gotten the right situation with your other people, you know. I think you'll know what I'm talking about when you're experiencing it, when you're in there and you're like, this is good. This is perfect. Like,
yeah, I always, it's a weird one. I think, because I would always picture some of the bands that I love and think like, I'd love to have the input of that X, Y, and Z person. Not even like just their ability or anything. Like, everyone I was in the band with had a good ability. But it's like, I'd love to have had the input from that guy or that guy, you know, which I guess it's pretty an indicator that it's obviously just how I felt about it. It's just an indicator you're not in the right situation, isn't it? But have you always found it easy to collaborate when you feel there's a good idea? Because I know I always, like, I think even if I hear a good idea, sometimes I need a second to just like calm the ego down and just go, okay, like, this is good. It's not my idea, but it's good, so we can use it.
Oh, okay, yeah, absolutely. Because like, there's so much passion involved in creating, you know. So, yeah. Wait, what was your question?
So have you always been good at taking other people's ideas and not letting the ego kind of take over and just take control of the situation? Have you always been good at kind of letting people have their input freely, basically?
Yeah, no, I haven't been good at that, but I've developed now that I'm much more open-minded. So I was very closed-minded, I think, and I always, you know, the ego, because he's like, my idea is the best idea, you know. That's sort of my ego back in the day, you know. And the more I've grown as a musician, the more I've realized that actually it's not the case, you know. Other people have amazing ideas, and if you just let them, you're going to make a better song. So I've got that sort of feeling these days where I'm much more open-minded to it, and I think the results are just always, you know, every time I've done it, the results have been just so far beyond what I could achieve on my own, you know. So that's sort of, I think as I've tried it and slowly let things come more into my process, then I've realized the benefits, you know. So I think maybe I'm quite selective with who I let into that process, you know. They've got to have a pretty good track record and that sort of stuff. So once I know that, okay, this person consistently brings great creative ideas into what they're doing and whatever I've heard them feature on and stuff. So, you know, I sort of know what I can tell what they're going to, you know, into a large degree, how they can fit into what I'm doing, you know? So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I think as guitarists as well, I think guitar might be one of the hardest instruments to give up the creativity on a bit, because I think, you know, as a drummer, you've got to have someone if all you can play is drums, you've got to have someone provide you know, some harmony and some melody.
Yeah.
Or the bass player, you kind of need someone to put the chords in there, and yes, you can do a bit of rhythm, but you need the drummer there. Whereas with guitar, you can kind of dictate that stuff a bit more, you know, in terms of you can dictate a bit of a rhythm, harmony, melody. You can kind of do all of that. So to give up portions of that, I know I find quite tricky. And I think it is about trusting the right people. It's just so damn hard to find the right people. I find anyway.
For sure.
But so with more like guitar driven music, you know, if you look back at like your you kind of classically almost your virtuoso guitarist, like when I think of like guitar music, if you like, when I go back to like the first idea people I think of are like Satriani, Steve Vai, all of these kind of like, I guess and Yngwie, all of these kind of people that were at the forefront of this virtuoso instrumental sort of rock metal stuff. And then it feels like nowadays, with artists like yourself, like Pliny, if you listen to like Intervals, although it does very much feel like sort of guitar has been like maybe the starting point for a lot of it, it feels more band driven now. It feels more like there's balance in it. I feel like when you listen to some Steve Vai, Satriani, it felt very much like the guitar was kind of the singer on top of the band. And that's not a criticism, it's just that's how I kind of hear it anyway. Whereas now, especially like listening to your acoustic album, the strings are so prominent, and it felt like a much more balanced, and again, that balance it's down to you whether you prefer that or not, but it feels like it's evolved in such a way that the band has become more of a focus. Well, I guess A, do you agree? And B, what do you think maybe is next can you see it even maybe going back to more like guitar virtuoso stuff, or what do you think is next in this kind of evolution of like instrumental stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think I do agree. I agree. I think yeah, for my tastes, like I've sort of come from the sort of pop punk sort of stuff. Like I grew up on, Blink-182, Green Day and that sort of stuff, and that's all a well-rounded song, maybe, you know what I mean? More than it's like, okay, I'm the guitarist and I'm sick, so everything's got to sit underneath me and it's got to showcase my amazing skills. I never really quite got into that early on. I was more into those traditional, songwriters. So to me, it's very important that the song has all those elements working together, and you have those features. It's not everything's underneath the guitar. And stay out of my way. Your parts have to just get away from what I'm doing. Like I think a good song has elements of showcases everything, and you take the guitar out in places, or you really feature the strings here, or you really feature the drums here. I think that's super important to a good song being a good song. It's not like I'd hate to be known as I'd hate to be the best guitarist in the world that songs don't, hit home to someone, because it's just the skills above everything else. I don't think it just doesn't connect with me. Like I appreciate amazing skills, obviously, but it's not what really affects me emotionally and stuff. I need those elements to be right and to work together, and have those other features going on and other interests within the song, and have a well sculpted song. So it's not a guitar solo for 4 minutes. So that's my vibe personally. And as for what I think is going to happen in the future for guitar, I mean, I hope it goes back. I mean, I hope it sort of steers away from the skills being the prominent element of the songs. I think I love crazy guitar skills and all that, but used tastefully and used as a in conjunction with a great song, with a great story being told. I think that's where it works really well, and that's where it becomes the most impressive. I think when if you bust out those cool guitar moments in that one spot, that they really stand out, rather than introducing them the whole time. You don't get that. You don't get those musical dynamics and contrasts and stuff like that I think are important. That's the thing I have a bit of a gripe with some of the music that I see out there more so in guitar, where it's like, and I'm guilty, I'm guilty. Let's be real, right? But it's like, look at my awesome skills. This song is about how good my skills are, right? I just loses interest for me at this point in my life.
Yeah. I think there's an inherent thing in the guitarist brain to want to impress, I think we're all guilty of it, and I don't know if you maybe get that I think you definitely get it with vocalists. I think almost in order of like, you go vocals, guitar, bass, drums.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know whether it diminishes with each one in terms of that need to like impress, but I feel like it is a guitar thing.
Totally. Totally.
Weirdly, I was just when I was sort of flicking through social media, as I do all too often, it was only a little while, it was only very shortly before we started chatting. I came across a thing, and it was Matt Shadows from Avenged Sevenfold talking about his advice for bands starting out. And actually, it quite conveniently for this podcast, I thought actually I'd be interested to hear what you think. I've never actually quoted someone in a podcast before, so you're here for a first.
Nice.
But I just thought it was a really good, not quote so much, but just statement, like what he said. And I think this relates particularly to what you're doing because, I'll tell you what he said and then see what you think. Because the quote that I took was, he said, nothing will take you further away from what's important than trying to create something that will appease everyone. And he said, the one that I really liked, said, analytics show us where we have been, not where we're going. This whole idea of sort of appeasing people with what you write and trying to just write for the sake of, I don't know, TikTok or what's going to be popular. And obviously writing like instrumental music, you're already approaching a niche audience there, in terms of like, because a lot of people, they need to hear a vocal on there,
Yeah.
So I guess I'm kind of asking what your take is on that, specifically with the fact that obviously, like I said, you put yourself into a niche bracket purely just by writing instrumental music in the first place, and there's always going to be that temptation to write something maybe that isn't true to you, that maybe appeals broadly to more people. Have you ever is that anything that's ever kind of crossed your mind, and what's your kind of take on what he said?
Yeah, I agree with what he said. I think trying to write music for other people is a massive trap, because you can't win that battle,
You can win it for a week.
Yeah.
Then they get bored.
Yeah, maybe. I just think it's just the wrong way to go. Like, yeah, I mean, ultimately, you got to think about, okay, what am I here for? Like, what am I doing? Like, do I want to be famous? Do I want to, write stuff that I like and it doesn't matter if anyone cares? What am I doing? Like, you got to figure that out. You got to have that discussion with yourself and set out your goals and stuff like that. And I think trying to make music to be popular is a trap. Because you're already behind the game. At that point, if you're chasing what's popular now, you're already behind the game. You're always going to be behind the game. So you kind of have to. I think you don't be afraid to take that left turn when everyone's going right. Take that opposite direction and explore that. And ultimately, you got to do what makes you happy, because you're going to be miserable. If I make a banjo record that's a hit, I'm going to be miserable, because I might be this famous banjo player, but I don't like banjo. I'm not a banjo person. So why would I put myself in that thing? I think maybe you're happy for the short term, but honestly, you're going to be miserable when you've built your whole thing up as this thing that's nothing to do with you, So I think I'd encourage people to really, really try and think about what they aspire to, what they want to be, what they want to do with their lives, their goals, and try and hone in on that, and don't worry about what else is happening around you. And maybe, I mean, that's the thing, because for me, I'm a hobbyist who has somehow gone into a professional career. And that's by in a lot of ways good fortune and good luck, because I conceded that I wasn't going to be able to do what I'm doing now. At some point in my life, I'm like, okay, it's not going to happen for me. I need to get a job. I need to get money so I can live, and I'm going to do music as a hobby, and it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter anymore. But as we've gone along, I've managed to collect a niche audience and been able to put myself in this position. But it's just a dangerous thing to start yourself off. All right, how am I going to get a career? I personally think it's a difficult thing, because then you start doing things for other people. I see people like on YouTube are like constantly like, okay, what do you want me to do, guys? Tell me in the comments what you want me to do. I just don't understand that. Like, why would you base yourself? I mean, you're basically just employed at that point, you're basically working for someone else. I kind of feel, I would rather be doing my own thing, and whether that's my profession or not, at least you've got that fulfillment. And I think you're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, I really want to clip all of that because that was all really cool. But I think I'm gonna, because like I said, I make these little reels, and that's such a cool little kind of clip
for it.
And I'm gonna have to try and pick out all the best bits of that because it's really cool. I think the thing the other thing I'm guilty of when I'm listening to people on the podcast is they'll say something cool and then it will spark something in my head, and then I'll tune out for about 10 seconds and go, oh wait, I'm back in the room. But what I really latched onto was when you were saying about the trends and following trends and stuff. It reminded me weirdly of something in Wolf of Wall Street. I don't know if you've seen the movie. I feel like everyone's seen it.
Yeah.
When he said something along the lines of, if you see it in the stock market, it's already too late. It's already blown up to the point where you can't make money out of that. Not like people did, like in Apple. It's like investing in Apple now. What's that going to get you? It's interesting that if you try and follow a trend that you've seen pop up on social media, you're already behind because you didn't set that trend. And ironically, the people
100%
trend are the ones that did something a little bit different in the first place. So yeah, I thought that was quite a cool. I thought that was interesting that you kind of picked up on that, and and also what you said about essentially being employed by your audience. Yeah. It's like if you ask yourself, did you set out to be employed by an audience in that way? I think a lot of people would say no. It's good to listen to other people, of course, but to be completely at the mercy of what they want you to do is, again, if they stop liking what you do, even if you try and do what they do, you're completely doomed. I really that idea of just doing you and letting the audience come to that, I think, is really important. I had a really good question based off of that, and it's totally in my ramblings. That's so good. It's totally left me. There was one more kind of thing I wanted to ask about, maybe even some advice, I suppose, for people listening. Is I watched a little bit of that sort of documentary you did for your latest album, and you're talking about picking up a steel string and kind of the difficulty of that, and I also, John Mayer talks about this as well, when the initial process of picking up the guitar being so tricky. I feel like it's a much more, I have to explain to a lot of my students, the first ones, I'm like, if you get a piano and you hit a key, you're going to get a note of varying sort of velocity, but you're going to get a note. And no one can really tell you who played that note. It could be anyone. Obviously, in combinations of notes and things, you can figure out who it would be. But whereas with a guitar, you could pick it up and you could hit the wrong string. You could not hold the fret hard enough. It's unlikely you can't just press a key on a piano. So, and then John Mayer talks about this idea of how a lot of beginner guitarists, obviously by nature, buy the cheaper, buy a starter guitar or whatever, and they're mostly decent quality nowadays, but they might be really poorly set up and all that. And it's so uninspiring to pick something like that up, especially if you've got a better guitar and you go back to something like that. What do you think we could maybe do to inspire not even another generation, but just inspire people that pick it up and go, well, this is too difficult, I'm never going to get this?
Like in terms of like trying to solve the instrument like accessibility and stuff.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, that what you said, that's always annoyed me, because I used to be a guitar teacher. So, kids would get their guitar from Aldi, or like what Aldi is?
Yeah. Yeah, we got it here, yeah.
Aldi era. So they'd get their guitars from Aldi.
I'm going to assume so.
What's that?
Assuming it's the same Aldi. I'm going to assume it is.
Basically, it's a supermarket, but for some reason they sell like guitars and stuff. It's, I don't know. It's just, a weird mix of stuff. And it's like uber cheap, and no one really understands what's the deal, but they just get cheap food. So whatever, I don't know. But yeah, so parents would get their kids these Aldi guitars, and, they'd give them to me to tune up, and I'd be like, dude, I'd struggle to fucking do something with this. Like, good luck with you, like you doing it, So that used to really bug me. But I think nowadays, as long as they get steered in a certain direction where, if you look at some of the starter brands, they're actually workable. Like I've seen a few like instrument reviews of like $50 guitars from Amazon or something that are like, they work fine. So that's at least a good start. But yeah, I don't know how you solve that. I mean, I think they're gradually improving, so maybe that'll be less of an issue. But I think the thing to try to pass on is like the feeling you get when you progress. When you finally get that chord to sound right, the feeling you get is once you've experienced that, then there's no going back. It's like, okay, I've got this chord now. Now I want to get this other chord. And then you get all these chords, and then, all right, now I'm going to get that chord change from G to D, And then once you get that, you're like, I'm making music now, So once they get that feeling, once they get that feeling, I think certain people are going to get addicted to that, and it's just going to be a snowball effect. I think that's how it sort of played out for me. So I think it's trying to explain that the payoff in, when work pays off, that feeling.
Yeah, it's so hard to try and tell people that that's going to happen, kind of thing, especially when I'm teaching and I can play the stuff that I'm showing them, and they're kind of going like, oh, this is tricky. It's difficult to convince people. And I think the other thing is, I've noticed so many students, I have to remind them, they'll get so far in a month, for example, and they'll maybe get the hang of a chord or these various little things, and then they'll be getting annoyed because they miss one string on the chord. I'm like, you couldn't even play the chord a month ago. Like, just you chill out. Like, you're achieving stuff, and it's so easy to get wound up in like relative success, where you forget the absolute success almost. Like, you forget that you've gone from a month ago not being able to play that to now you can, and yes, you missed one note, but like you couldn't even do one note at all a month ago. Yeah. And I think, and people get so like, and I do it, everyone does it. You get so wound up, like so quickly sometimes, and forget like where you were not that long ago. So yeah, it's a tricky.
I got an idea. Just record them at the end of the session, right? And get them to do the chord that they're working on or whatever it is. And then when that conversation comes up, you just get your iPad out and show them and be like, look, that was where you were. So now you can do that chord and you can do that one. So it's huge.
Yeah. Oh, but what if they actually can't though?
Yeah, it's tricky, man. It is tricky. I that's why I don't make a great guitar teacher. I don't think. It's a tricky existence, man. It really is.
Yeah. So I've been doing it for maybe like nearly a couple of years now. I took my girlfriend out she's just learning to drive now, and I took her out in my car. We just went to a car park and I was trying so hard to be in like teacher mode, and I realized that I thought there'd be quite a lot of crossover and I'd be able to teach quite well, and I think I maybe was better than your average person at teaching it, but geez, like I was like, no, you got to press this, and then you got to, it's
yeah
it was. But yeah, no, I think it's a tricky balance to find. But yeah, I mean, hopefully that's kind of, I hope that's given people an insight into you as a bit of a deeper insight into how you work and kind of beyond just the playing, I think, hopefully.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it'd be cool to hear if you've got a question. I know there's always pressure at the end of the podcast for the next guest to kind of go off of.
I wish you should have given me this heads up earlier so I could.
So I like it to be more on the spot.
Okay.
I mean, because then you could prepare a question, then we talk about something for an hour, and you're like, oh, actually, that question's nothing about what we.
Okay. Oh God. All right. How about this? You wake up. You're homeless. You're starting from scratch. What's your moves?
What's your move? That's a good.
What's your move going to be?
That's total like existentialist survival as well. Like, what do you? Yeah, but I guess it's like fresh start on a more profound sense. It's like fresh start in life. What do you do? You know. Silver linings. I guess you could look at it that way. You know. So yeah, that's awesome. That's a good one. I always worry. There's only been one time where someone's asked a question that's already been asked. So I always.
Right.
And eventually, the more of these I do, it's going to happen. So, but no, that's a good one. That's
sure.
That is pretty fresh. So, also, I need you to plug an artist that you think deserves some love. Maybe, and it doesn't have to be. I've expanded it to a musical person. So it can be an artist, a band. Quite often is, but it can be anyone that you think is deserving of some love and attention in the music world.
Okay. Well, this band recently got back together from Australia. They sort of disbanded in about 2007-ish, I think. But one of a band that made a big impact on me and my journey into guitar music, especially and metal and stuff, called Sunk Loto from Australia. They recently got back together, so they're doing shows at the moment, and I've heard them talking about writing music, so that's pretty cool. Check out Sunk Loto.
Nice, yeah, for sure. Awesome. It's good as well. The other thing is I'm yet to hear a repeat on the bands, I think, from memory. So it's nice to see that everyone's got little different bands to promote. Maybe one will luck out and get a few recommendations, and then they'll, But
true.
That's awesome. And do you have anything that you want to kind of sort of plug for your own sake or sort of message to the world?
Yeah, I released an album called The Quiet Place Away. That was a few months ago now, and very proud of that album. So it's all acoustic, very chilled out sort of music. So if you're looking to get those chill vibes into your lounge room, or you've got a drive coming up, or if you're stressed out about something, maybe it could be a good listen for you.
Very
check it out.
Immersive kind of. I thought it was really cool listening to it. I was quite taken aback as well, because obviously, given the other music you've done to this point, felt like you kept your character in there. But and what I was talking about with the things like the strings, where the guitar isn't just like the thing. There's a lot going on. So yeah, I'll second that recommendation. I think it'd only be right if I did anyway. So
awesome, man.
So thank you.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate you getting me into this. It's really cool. So thank you. I've had a great time.